Hey, I'm Dietec, and I got a Phanteks P400 Black Edition that I wanted to modify to be a Stranger Things themed PC case in celebration of Stranger Things Season 2 having come out a few weeks ago. So this is a time-lapse video of the process that I went through to get the normal stock P400 case to look like it does behind me. If you want to customize your own computer without having to buy tools or spend a bunch of time in the workshop, you should check out v1tech.com. You can find professionally made mods like GPU backplates, sleeve cables, fan grills, and a bunch of other stuff, and you can use the discount code DIETECMODS at checkout for 10% off any purchase. More info in the description. Dismantling your case is obviously a really large part of modding, and I was actually really pleasantly surprised with how easy this case was to take apart. Obviously, just like any other case really, you can take off the front panel and the two side panels without much hassle at all, but the thing about this case that I really haven't seen much anywhere else is the fact that you can take off the top panel with only a screwdriver. That makes it super easy to get a really good paint job on all of the parts that are going to be visible when the computer is completely reassembled. Now, I always really appreciate when a computer case already has a power supply shroud, but I just wanted to make this one look a little bit better. I've been playing around with backlighting acrylic recently, and I already confirmed that the power supply doesn't sit right up against this wall, so there is a little bit of room to put an acrylic panel behind it. And since this is going to be a Stranger Things themed case, I decided I'm just going to slap a glowing logo right onto the shroud. Getting your acrylic panel to be backlit is a little bit tricky sometimes just because light will sometimes leak through areas of the panel that you don't want it to. For example, usually your LED strip will be right up against the acrylic panel, and so if you didn't put enough coats of paint on the front of that panel, sometimes that LED strip will kind of shine through the painted part of the panel, and obviously that's not a good thing because you are trying to get this thing to look a specific way, and if the light is just doing whatever it wants, then that's kind of a bad thing. On this case mod, I did okay concerning the paint layer being thick enough. It was fine, there was no light bleeding through the paint, but since I put my LED strip on the bottom of this thing and it actually shined from the front to the back panel and then up that way, a little bit of the light did leak up from where I cut the big rectangular hole in the case, kind of like between the rectangular hole and the acrylic panel itself. There was a very small gap there and some light leaked up from that. So you kind of just have to be really careful with how you position these LED strips and where the light is going and all of that, but with a little bit of practice, you can get it looking pretty good. Usually if you mess up once, you kind of know what you did wrong and you can avoid making that mistake really ever again. And in this case, I did fix that problem just by putting some black tape over that area where the light was leaking up, and that kind of solved the problem. You can't see the black tape in the finished product because it's underneath the metal part. I was really just lucky that I could solve this problem with just a piece of tape, because if your paint isn't thick enough, if the light is leaking through the paint job, then either you can just put a piece of tape over the paint and that looks kind of bad, or you just have to repaint the whole thing and just make it thicker next time. And no, you're not going crazy, there's no black tape there in the actual video. I did put it on after I was done filming, Just imagine that there's black tape over the white vinyl that's holding the LED strip to the panel. Unfortunately, the stock P400 does have a little bit of an airflow problem. The intake fans just take air from the top and bottom little grills on the front panel, and those are pretty small, so the intake fans are a little bit starved for air sometimes. Now, even though I do value aesthetics pretty highly, I don't like to trade out functionality just for the sake of something looking good, so I decided I wanted to cut a couple holes in the front panel to help out with the airflow intake. I kinda just wanted to find a cool pattern to cut the holes into. This is just what I ended up with. Now, I know it's a little bit weird to paint a black piece of metal just another shade of black, but I do like matte black a lot better than glossy. Plus, I had to cover up the little ragged edges around the holes that I cut. Painting a metal piece of your case is super easy. All you have to do is sand it down first, get that glossy finish off. Just keep wiping down the part that you sanded until no more paint comes off onto the wet rag. Then make sure there's no dust on it and throw 3 or 4 light coats over the top. And what I mean by separate coats is you actually have to wait for your first coat to flash dry, which means it's dry to the touch. It takes usually 15 minutes before you put on the second coat. So the whole painting process, if you want to do 4 coats, could take you over an hour. Now here I used my vinyl cutter to just cut out this vinyl stencil, and I'm preparing it to transfer over to the case. Just in case you haven't seen the show, Hawkins Power and Light is like a front for the evil scientist guys in Stranger Things. I wanted to have some mesh to put behind these holes that I cut in the front of my case just to block some dust and debris from getting sucked in through the intake fans. So I just went to a local office supply store and just picked up this random mesh paper tray that I'm going to cut up and then attach to the back of these holes. To get it to stick behind these holes, I just used 2-part epoxy, which worked really well, and that is what I would suggest that other people do as well if they wanted to copy this method. But you could use super glue or hot glue or something else as well. The vinyl cutter that I use only cuts out pictures that are up to 8 inches wide, so I had to use 4 different vinyl sheets with 4 separate parts of the same picture to get the picture to be big enough to fit on the side panel. I just had to line up the 4 sections of the picture correctly, and it wasn't that hard. I did have to fill in a little bit of the middle areas with just some random pieces of extra vinyl, but considering I got it to look pretty good on my first try, I would consider this a success. So this actually isn't the end of this project. I am finished modding the actual PC case itself, but I do plan on going back in and building a computer inside of this thing and doing my first ever custom water cooling loop, which should be a lot of fun. And in the spirit of never having done something before, I'm going to be doing some other stuff that I don't have any experience with, like sleeving my cables from my power supply, which I've already got all of these supplies to do already. I just have to do it. It shouldn't be any more difficult than doing a hardline water cooling loop, so I'm not too worried about messing anything up exactly. And I actually did the gray and black theme on this case because I have RGB lights inside, and I figured some nice neutral colors like gray and black. I don't know, I really like gray. I've been doing a lot of gray cases lately, but I think it really goes well with RGB so that you can change the lights to be whatever color you want and it would still match the rest of the case. Anyway, if you want to see me actually finish this case mod, what with building inside of it and doing the custom loop and all of that, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. If you want to see progress pictures and stuff between videos, I post a lot of things on Instagram, so check the description for that. And I'm just really excited to finish up this mod, so I will see you in the next one.